The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Talk Politics. I'm Debra Hutchison. Our guest this week, fresh off the campaign trail, is MPP-elect for Pickering-Uxbridge, Peter Bethlenfalvy. Thanks so much for joining us. Have you recovered from your, 4-week marathon campaign?
Well, I don't know if I needed to recover, but it was quite the experience, clearly, as every campaign is. And you put your head down for 29 days, and we ran pretty hard. And of course, we had the tornado and storm ripped through Uxbridge and parts of Durham. So that was an extra twist, if you will.
Yeah, well said. Congratulations, first off, on the win, an overwhelming win. You actually ended up with even more support this time at the polls than you did in the first time around. Must be a huge sense of satisfaction for you and your team.
It is. You work really hard. I've been on your show many times, Debra. So, you've heard me many times, and you work hard over 4 years. It's a privilege and an honor to serve, but to then get a reaffirmation of that hard work and 4 more years and with a bigger plurality and a bigger percentage vote is very rewarding. But you know me, that means I'm just gonna. The stakes are even higher. I have to double down on my work ethic and deliver even more for Durham. And I've always said it's Durham's time, and I want to continue to be, along with my colleagues, a voice for Durham. We've got tremendous population growth coming into Durham. It's the best place to raise a family and to work, and we got to make sure we think ahead a little bit and make sure we have the infrastructure necessary. So to be able to do that over the next 4 years and get even a bit more of an encouragement to do it through the plurality is very rewarding.
Now, you were declared the winner by Canadian press shortly after the polls closed at 9 p.m. You didn't have to wait very long to know where you stood. Did that surprise you a little that the results came in that fast and that overwhelmingly in support of you?
Well, very much so, because we'd heard that there was delays at 27 polls and affecting 19 ridings. In 2018, the government was mandated or declared a victory at around 9:12 p.m. and I didn't get a tick mark till 10 p.m. So I had to sweat it out for another 48 minutes. This time it was rapid fire, and of course I was watching with family and friends and supporters. But then I had to get to the victory party much quicker than I thought. So it was quite the experience.
Federally, this riding is represented by the Liberals, Jennifer O'Connell. Why do you think provincially voters chose to mark that X beside your name in Pickering-Uxbridge?
Well, first off, I know that Jennifer has tested positive for COVID and she's vaxxed, and I wish her the best. I went through that a couple months ago. I think Premier Ford had a very clear plan and message for the people of Ontario to continue to rebuild this economy after 2 years of the pandemic, and a clear vision about building things and doing things, and so I think that message really was resonated with people, and I think was very clear message and really put us in contrast to the previous government under the Liberals for 15 years, where they had a lot of time to do these things and didn't get it done. They talked about a lot of things, and every 4 years we'll talk about it some more. But Premier Ford had a very, very clear vision and a message for the people of Ontario, and I think that very much resonated. And I think that's why I was fortunate enough to get in Pickering-Uxbridge, almost 45% votes to win my riding.
What do you think it was about the actual campaign, the Conservative campaign, that grabbed the voters' attention that they liked, as opposed to the NDP and the Liberal campaigns? There's been a lot of speculation about that.
Well, I talked to the experts. I can tell you that we had I think from the ground, looking to the campaign team, the campaign chair, campaign manager, and Corey Tanaik and his team, and Amin Massoudi and the campaign chair, Nick Cavalis. I think they ran a really brilliant campaign. And part of that was a very clear message about, as I just said, building and focusing on what mattered really to people. As I knocked on doors, it resonated very much. The pandemic was tough, but they wanted to move on and rebuild after 2 years. They wanted to get on with life. And so that message really resonated, I think, with people. And we were very disciplined about communicating that message. And thirdly, I would say the leader. I mean, Doug Ford, you got to see Doug Ford for 4 years, particularly 2 years in the pandemic. I think he did 250 press conferences through the pandemic. You really got to know that the authenticity, I should say, of the premier, and so his leadership and just that focus on the message, I think, really resonated with people.
I want to ask you also about voter turnout. As overwhelming as the victory was for your party and yourself, voter turnout in Ontario was at its lowest in history at 43%. I mean, Pickering-Uxbridge a little higher at 45%. What do you think is behind that, and how disappointing is that figure for you?
Not disappointing at all. I think you see in politics, change elections usually have a higher turnout, and when people are satisfied, you typically see in the history of not only Ontario but in the country, you see lower turnout. So the message I received, democracy works. People were satisfied, and of course, I think the number one thing is always to get out and vote. I think we've fought hard. I did a D-Day service on Sunday at the Cenotaph and at City Hall in Pickering, and I made the point that the people in the Ukraine are fighting for democracy. Our people on June 6th on D-Day in 1944 worked hard to preserve democracy and freedoms. And so the electoral franchise and voting is paramount. And I remember meeting one woman at the door who said she was going to vote for me, but she wasn't certain about her son who was with her. And it was his first time. And I said, well, make sure you learn the issues. And the most important thing, whether you vote for me or anybody else, is go vote. And I think that's what makes Ontario and Canada the place it is. And we have to remember those who fought hard for those freedoms, that we could have that franchise here in Canada.
Okay. It has been argued by the NDP and the Liberal that with the lowest voter turnout on Ontario history, naturally they are looking at this differently. The question is being asked: does that really give the Conservatives a mandate?
100%, it gives us a mandate, and I think we ran on a very clear not only message that I mentioned, but also the budget that I was fortunate enough to table on April 28th was really our campaign platform. Told people very clearly and transparently what we plan to do if reelected, and that we would retable that budget, and that's what we intend to do. So I think that we got a very clear mandate from the people of Ontario. 83 seats, only 5 governments in history in Ontario have gotten a bigger plurality and seats after a first term majority. Last time, Leslie Frost, I think in the 50s. So quite an accomplishment. The people have spoken, and we're gonna now get right back to work, Deb, and get that done, get that budget done, and move forward, because that's what the people of Ontario want us to do.
So where do we stand now as far as getting back to work? Is the legislature taking the summer off? Not that you take the summer off. I mean, the work continues, but where do we go from here?
Well, I think the Premier in his press conference the following day after the election was pretty clear that he said we would come back at a certain point, that he had some big decisions to make, and I can understand those decisions that he alone has to make based on the input and advice of many around him, and the timing of when to come back to the legislature. And I think he was also very clear that we would be retabling the budget with some tweaks here and there, but in the main, the budget that we tabled back in April, late April. And so these are the decisions that he will have to make. And I look forward to playing whatever role that he wants me and our colleagues to play to get that done.
So what were you hearing from people at the door? What were some of their main concerns?
Well, it's fascinating. There's nothing like knocking on doors. And I knocked on thousands of doors and talked to literally thousands of people right across all of Pickering and all of Uxbridge. And, so it's hard to generalize, but if I could bucket them a little bit, I would say that infrastructure was big, in terms of building, getting broadband, getting housing, getting hospitals built, getting long-term care, getting roads and highways built, public transit, these sort of things were very much, I heard a lot about that people, had an experience being in gridlock, for example. Most of Pickering-Uxbridge has a car. People have a car. And so taking kids to school or getting to a job. The second big thing I heard was, the cost of living, with a lot of things, the pinch at the gas stations, the groceries, the rents, the day-to-day, pocketbook issues. And so that was a big theme. And of course, we've got lots of solutions for that. And of course, we can talk about that. The third thing was healthcare. Clearly we have an aging population. We're all aging. And so making sure that we're certainly a plan to continue to stay open, not be, brought to a shutdown because we don't have enough ICU beds or we don't have enough nurses or we don't have enough PSWs, to make sure that we continue going forward on a plan to stay open and investing in healthcare was another big theme that came through at the doors.
And of course, Pickering-Uxbridge is so unique in that, half your riding is very urban, and then you have the north, Uxbridge, which is so unique in its own way too.
Well, about 80% live in Pickering, 20% live in Uxbridge. I think it represents a lot of what Ontario looks like. We have the urban, we have the suburban, and then we have the more rural parts of Pickering-Uxbridge. So that's why I love working for the people of Pickering-Uxbridge. And, we're delivering a hospital up in Uxbridge and a long-term care facility. That really resonated. We built the long-term care facility at the Ajax Pickering Hospital right beside it, 320 beds, the Lake Ridge Gardens. And people, I got an email from someone who for 2 years had been on the wait list to get into a long-term care home. And by the way, we inherited this wait list from the previous government in 2018. And he was so thankful to be able to have his wife, who had dementia, be placed into Lake Ridge Gardens. And otherwise, he'd still be on a wait list, and the pressure on him and his family was tremendous. So he's very grateful. And that's what public service is all about. And that's what we're going to continue to do for Pickering-Uxbridge and really all of Durham and all of Ontario.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. More of our conversation with MPP-elect for Pickering-Uxbridge, Peter Bethlenfalvy, after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
When it comes to drugs, how much freedom is too much for kids?
Drugs are out there. Will my teen feel free to say no around other kids?
I didn't live drug-free when I was younger. Can I admit that to my kids?
Drugs worry me, but how can I feel free to talk about it with my kids?
Questions about drugs and kids? Drug-Free Kids Canada.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the RTV quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The RTV quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV quiz.
I'm Eric Marchinosa's Cinema Scene in Review. Join me for a monthly movie roundup of new releases either in theaters or available to stream. See you next time in Review.
Hi, I'm Angel Morgan, host of Raising Energy. Join me weekly as I connect to spirits, animals, and so much more. That's right, Raising Energy, right here only on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Pickering-Uxbridge MPP-elect Peter Bethlenfalvy. We were talking about how unique Pickering-Uxbridge is, and you made a good point. It really represents all of Ontario because it has the suburban, the urban, the rural, the agricultural in it. And we were talking about the concerns that you were hearing at the door. I want to ask you more about the long-term care, and we were speaking briefly on that before we went to break. During the pandemic, Pickering was one of the hardest hit for its long-term care facilities. You, of course, have opened up Lakeridge Gardens. It's a start, but is it really enough? Where do you see us going to improve the care for our seniors in long-term care and increasing the access to quality care?
Well, I think it's paramount. And so we recognized that when we were elected because we made a commitment in the 2018 campaign to build 30,000 new beds. And since then, we created the Ministry for Long-Term Care, first time in Ontario's history, before the pandemic. So it was a priority before the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic really highlighted why it needed to be a priority. And that's why, again, we put through subsequent budgets funding in place to build 31,000, I think it's over 31,000 new beds and upgrade 28,000 beds. So if you think about, in contrast, in Pickering, before we got elected in 2018, the previous 7 years, not a single new bed was built. And same in Ajax, not a single new bed. And so we've got it. We're playing catch up. We inherited that. We made some progress in the 4 years from 2018 to now, but there's a lot more to do. And we're committed to doing that. The second thing I would say is I put a lot of money in the budget for home care. People want to age at home as well. Mm-hmm. And that's more and more. And so by funding, putting over $1.5 billion, I think, since the fall economic statement to over 3 years to fund providing more supports for people so they can age at home, tax credits to support putting in the infrastructure and being help people with the costs of staying at home. And we've got something called the Community Paramedicine Program in Durham, which is also another program where paramedics actually come to your home and are on 24/7 alert to be able to, again, allow people to stay at home longer. Now, sometimes you have to go to a long-term care home. I mentioned that family who had a woman with dementia. I mean, that's part of why these long-term care facilities exist. And then the staffing port. And we put about a year and a half ago, funding almost $5 billion to hire 27,000 nurses and personal support workers because, Lakeridge Gardens, 320 beds, we built that in 13 months, but it's now fully staffed with nurses, personal support workers, and we've increased the standard of the hours of care. So that means we need more per resident of healthcare professionals. So there's a lot more to do. We started that process, and we're just going to continue going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned staffing, Lakeridge Gardens, labor shortages in general. That's what businesses, as they are trying to rebuild, are really sounding, not the alarm, but the warning signal about that they're having trouble with the labor shortages. Going forward, what can the government do to help businesses in that regard?
Well, it's absolutely a labor shortage has been a reality even before COVID, and then COVID again exacerbated that. And as we rebuild the economy, and rebuild our healthcare system and on so many levels. That's critical. There's no one thing that we're doing. I think there's multiple things that we're doing. Obviously, investing and supporting the skilled trades, because we're building so many highways and subways and hospitals and long-term care facilities and houses. I mean, construction workers, electricians, welders, Boilermakers as we expand our nuclear footprint in Darlington. You know, there are so many great jobs, bigger paychecks. You know, job security is going to be there, but we need those skilled workers, and so we have to work with the colleges and the universities. We have to continue to work with foreign accreditation. We're working with the labor community, and that's why we had, I think, 8 labor unions, private sector construction labor unions support us, because you don't do it alone. You do it with in partnership, working with all the stakeholders, and recognize that we've got to be very thoughtful, deliberate, and creative about how we set the conditions to attract the labor, retain the labor, make sure they're skilled in the right types of jobs, and provide those supports. We got something that we used to call the Second Career Program, which is the Better Jobs Program now, to help people bridge from maybe one career that is no longer in demand to a new career that is in demand, like personal support workers or electricians, or and so there's many things and a lot of funding that goes behind that. I put in over $1 billion in the budget to support employment opportunities. We put money into allowing unions to do more training at their local sites, working with colleges to enhance their ability to attract and retain skilled trade workers. And it's right around across the spectrum, whether it's technology, skilled trades, support workers, healthcare workers. It's right across the spectrum.
I also want to ask you about, you did mention in the first half about the cost of gasoline. What can the provincial government, or what should the provincial government be doing to make it more affordable at the pumps?
Listen, I tell you, I just, I'm scared to drive into a gas station every time I need to go, and I'm no different than anybody else. And it's shocking, really. And so that's why I tabled and we passed legislation before we left that will drop the gas price and the gas tax component by 5.7 cents a liter per gas on July 1st for 6 months, 5.3 cents for fuel, for diesel fuel, and as a means to help on the gas prices. Of course, you would know well that we took off the tolls at 418 and 412. That helps, and of course that also helps reduce gridlock. More people are taking that now to get to wherever they're getting quicker. So that really helps some of the pressure on the 401. Of course, the license plate stickers, that's not only the rebate that we put into people's accounts in the bank accounts, but also taking it away going forward. That's almost like a tax break, immediate cash in the pocket for many. As you know, in Durham, many people rely on cars to get them going to where they're going. And finally, public transit. We're putting an extraordinary amount of money into public transit, including extending the GO train from Oshawa to Bowmanville, putting 2 stops in Oshawa, 2 in Bowmanville. That will be also good. Not just down the road for affordability when people if they need to take public transit, we'll have more options. So there's many things that we're doing to help with the cost of living. And of course, increasing the minimum wage again, that'll kick in on October 1st to $15.50. So that'll help. And of course, I lowered I put in the tax rebate for people making up to $50,000, enhanced how much lower income workers will get back in their pocket when they file their taxes next year. So there's many things that will help. Of course, there's always more to do, and we'll continue to look at ways to help people with the cost of living and bring costs down.
Okay, we only have about 3 more minutes, but I want to ask you going forward. I'm sure you have your own wish list of things that you want to see accomplished in the next 4 years. What would be the top 2? So
much to do, so little time. There are. I think it goes back to the stuff that I heard at the door. Continue to work on infrastructure. Be it broadband, be it healthcare. Get more hospitals into Durham. We need more hospitals. We need more supports for the healthcare system. We need more long-term care facilities. We're widening the 401, starting in Pickering, going eastbound. That takes time to do. We put that in the budget. and so that'll help with gridlock. Obviously the tolls that came off April 5th. I think we just got to continue focused on the economy and bringing good jobs into Durham and bigger paychecks. I think about the 2,600 jobs in Oshawa for electric car production. We're building an electric vehicle, behemoth in Ontario to really produce and hopefully bring down the cost of electric vehicles so everyone can afford an electric vehicle. And then the electricity to power that through the small modular reactor in Darlington. So it's not just Pickering-Uxbridge that I think we've got to do. We've got to work in partnership with the region, and I'll be meeting with the mayor of Pickering and meeting with the mayor of Uxbridge and Mayor Chair John Henry in the not too distant future to make sure we're aligned on the key priorities for Durham. But as Durham goes, all Ontario goes. So I'll play my part advocating for Pickering-Uxbridge and Durham Region and helping the whole province.
Okay, we just have 1 minute left. I want you to take a look back at your last 4 years in office. What are you most proud of?
Well, that we got through the pandemic together, that we faced the greatest challenge in our lives, and we got through it. And those were tough decisions. Not everything was perfect, but as the Premier said, the intent was always good. We're always transparent and honest with the people of Ontario, and we did it together. Getting the healthcare system, getting that 320-bed facility built for Ajax and Pickering, Lake Ridge Gardens. I mean, that's a real tangible. That's helping people's lives. Getting the Uxbridge Cottage Hospital, we announced it, but we've got the long-term care facility that'll go right beside this campus of care, just like at the Ajax Pickering Hospital. 192 new beds. I want to see the shovels get in the ground, and I want to help, be there for all people in the riding as through my constituency. When they need help, give us a call, because that's what we're there for.
Okay, and on that, we are out of time. Peter Bethlenfalvy, thank you once again for spending time with us.
Always a pleasure.
You have been watching Talk Politics on Rogers TV. Until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison. Stay safe, everybody.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
The first day of National Indigenous Peoples Day was on June 21st, 1996.
We celebrate the unique heritage, languages, cultural practices, spiritual beliefs, and vast history of connection to the lands, now called Kanata or Canada. The contributions and stewardship that are the foundations of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit ways of life are deep, powerful, and meaningful. We have our own name for this great country, Turtle Island. We've always been here honoring all creation with our songs, stories, and deep relationships to Earth Mother. This day is a day of celebration, and as I sing the songs of our people, I encourage all Canadians to pause and reflect on the enormous, diverse contributions of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are here. The greatest man who ever have been for time immemorial, and will continue to be here for generations to come.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive.